by presidential elections both in Washington and in Paris. Take the French example, for instance. Nicolas Sarkozy, when he announced that he was going to pull out combat troops by late 2013, which sounded like an early pullout. He was moved, of course, by the deaths of the 4 French soldiers killed by an Afghan soldier about 2 weeks ago now. But he was also moved by his main political adversary in this very difficult re-election campaign that he faces, his adversary François Hollande, who had pitched the idea, in fact, who promised to pull out troops by the end of this year if he's elected. Never mind that it's not a very achievable goal logistically on the ground. It
sounds good.
It sounds good, and it's an idea that polls very well with the French population. 84% of French are in favor of the idea of pulling out troops by the end of the year. And that explains why Nicolas Sarkozy wanted to make an announcement which, on the one hand, curried favor with the French electorate, and on the other hand, still could be more or less, if it's tweaked, compatible with France's commitments to NATO. And you have a similar thing going on with the United States. Barack Obama inherited 2 wars from the Bush administration. He came to office promising to end both of them. And regarding Afghanistan specifically, he sold the American population a package, if you will, at the beginning of his presidency. He said, first of all, we're going to boost troops in Afghanistan. That was called a surge. But he had told them, don't worry, by a specific deadline, by a specific time, I'm going to start drawing down. What he's doing now is trying to stick to that deadline so that during his campaign, he can say, I did what I said.
Cyril Vanier, thanks very much for all of that, for Top Story. Thank you. Russia has dampened hopes that a deal is close on a UN Security Council resolution on Syria. After hopes emerged on Thursday that the breakthrough was possible, Russia's ambassador told a closed session of the Council overnight that Moscow would in fact veto the latest draft resolution. A new draft, further watered down, is now being circulated, although it is unclear whether the changes will be enough to get past a possible Russian veto. Well, while the UN looks for ways to condemn the violence in Syria, the forces of Bashar al-Assad have locked down the town of Hama, where pro-democracy activists marked yesterday the 30-year anniversary since the massacre of tens of thousands of residents by forces loyal to Bashar al-Assad's father.
The streets are empty in Hama. A general strike was staged to mark the anniversary of the 1982 massacre under then-President Hafez al-Assad. Government forces were deployed to put down an Islamic revolt, and in doing so, leveled entire neighborhoods of the city. An estimated 10,000 to 40,000 people were killed. Activists painted the streets red, symbolizing the victims' blood, and wrote Hafez died and Hama will not die. 30 years on, and the massacre has become a rallying cry across Syria. In Daraa, protesters burned flags of Russia, China, and Iran, allies to the regime that oppose foreign intervention. The United Nations is currently discussing a draft resolution to end the violence. It estimates more than 5,000 people have been killed since the uprising began nearly 11 months ago. And the tension is not likely to end soon. The government's heavy military presence continues, and this amateur footage in Homs shows residents joining forces with the rebel Free Syria Army. They're hoping to end the Assad family's grip on power that has lasted 4 decades.
In Senegal, opposition parties have vowed new protests over President Abdoulaye Wade's bid for a 3rd term. This as the veteran leader dismissed the deadly tensions as a normal pre-election phenomenon. The June 23rd movement has called for a prayer meeting in central Dakar this Friday for those killed during protests against Wade's controversial candidacy for a 3rd presidential term in polls that are due to be held on the 26th of February.
Stone throwing and tear gas. Extraordinary scenes of violence in the Senegalese capital. For the past few days, Dakar's seen clashes between anti-Wade protesters and government forces. At least 4 people have been killed, many more injured. The greatest demonstrations have been in the area of Koloban, close to the city's obelisk square. Here, tension is rising ahead of the start of electoral campaigning.
My parents are scared because they don't know where Senegal is going.
It's true, we're afraid. The country is in an extremely serious situation.
The last anti-Wade protests brought thousands of people into the streets. The opposition's made daily calls for demonstrations across Senegal. The government's deployed riot police throughout the cities. This analyst says the political situation here is unprecedented in the country's history.
It's the first time in the history of politics in Senegal, since the independence, that both France and the United States make such clear statements. They don't target President Abdoulaye Wade himself, but they express growing concern over the turn of events, over a worrying situation.
People here are living in an uneasy calm. Anxiously, Senegal's people await the start of the presidential election campaign, hoping whoever stands, things will not get worse.
It is 9:15 here in Paris. You're watching our morning edition. It is time now for some news in brief. The search continues off the coast of Papua New Guinea after a ferry carrying 350 people sank on Thursday morning. At least 100 people are still missing and now feared drowned. In Colombia, a FARC attack on a police station leaves at least 6 people dead and 15 injured. Guerrillas from the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia launched homemade bombs at the police station in the town of Villarrica in the Cauca region, a strategic area for both production and export of cocaine. And in the American Republican race, Mitt Romney gets what he himself calls an unlikely endorsement. Flamboyant real estate mogul Donald Trump gives Romney his backing despite having repeatedly criticized him over the last few months.
Mitt is tough, he's smart, he's sharp. He's not going to allow bad things to continue to happen to this country that we all love. So, Governor Romney, go out and get him. You can do it.
Well, here in Europe, the cold snap continues and continues to claim more lives. 164 people have now died as countries from Ukraine to Italy struggle with temperatures that plunged to record lows in some places and with more cold weather forecast.
Across Europe, temperatures fall and the death toll climbs. In Bosnia, rescuers were forced to use helicopters to reach people in remote villages.
It's very cold. Minus 20, minus 30. Everything's frozen.
Serbian authorities say snow as deep as 5 meters has stranded 11,000 people. Efforts are concentrated on evacuating the sick and delivering food and gas. The extreme cold has even forced some schools to close early.
We can't heat the classrooms from minus 36 outside to plus 20 inside. That's almost a 60-degree difference. So at the moment, there's not enough fuel. All schools are under reduced working hours.
Ukraine is one of the worst hit countries by the cold snap. Power outages, food shortages, and dozens dead. Many are struggling just to keep warm.
In the morning, it was 0 degrees in our home and minus 35 degrees outside.
What has become one of the harshest winters in decades has wreaked havoc on the roads. A 20-car pileup in Milan injured 34 people. Travel was shut down at Bologna airport as well. Europe's freeze has left over 150 people dead in more than 10 countries. And many are bracing for the weekend, where the temperatures are forecast to drop even further.
Well, here in France as well, people have been coping with that cold snap. Indeed, as far south as Marseille, people have been having to deal with school closures and blocked roads.
Snowplows are out across France, while kids are enjoying snowball fights and sledding.
I'm happy. There's no school.
Still, there's work to be done, clearing snow at airports and on the roadways. In Corsica, residents there are dealing with the cold snap.
No electricity, no telephone, no mobiles, but there is snow and nature needs snow.
Parisians are taking a practical approach to the cold.
I've got 2 pairs of gloves, a bomber jacket, underneath another bomber jacket, a balaclava, a sweater, and a thermal shirt.
To help keep warm at construction sites, workers have lit bonfires. Officials are warning residents in the Côte d'Azur and Brittany to watch their electricity consumption. With the unseasonably low temperatures, they're worried about power outages. For the homeless in Paris, it's tough to find a warm place to sleep. With nighttime temperatures hitting 12 below, Sylvain settles down for the night in a building lobby.
Well, in the last couple of minutes, Ukraine's ministry has said that the death toll there, and of course the region worst hit by the cold snap, it's now reached 100 lives, the death toll in Ukraine alone. Time now at 10 to 9 here in Paris for a look at the very latest international headlines. Life imprisonment for the chief jailer of Cambodia's Khmer Rouge regime.